Hello and welcome to our new programme Behind Closed Doors. I'm joined by Martin Wells, who's the chairman of Out With Prostate Cancer. Martin suffers from prostate cancer himself, and we're here to discuss the effects on his body, the effects on his relationship, and what he's done to actively promote and help others. If you've got any questions for us today, you can get in touch with the show by texting us on 07548 200 007. So thank you so much for joining me today, Martin. Firstly, do you want to tell me about your cancer diagnosis then?
Sure. It started, I had no symptoms, and I'd had hemorrhoids for a long time.
Right.
And for some reason, one day I thought, oh, I think I need to get these sorted. And I was quite surprised because I'm thinking, well, I've had these for a long time. Why suddenly do I want to get these sorted?
Yeah.
So I went along to my GP and he examined me, digital rectal examination. Unbeknownst to me at the time, he'd actually felt my prostate whilst he was investigating the hemorrhoids. And he said, yeah, we'll get the hemorrhoids sorted, Martin, and I'll just take some blood, which I thought was for cholesterol because my dad died of heart attack. And 2 days later, he called me back to the surgery. And as I walked in, I remember saying to him, it's my prostate, isn't it? And he said, yeah, how do you know? And I said, I don't know, but I just got this feeling. And he said, yeah, your PSA, which is a way of measuring certain things for your prostate, your PSA reading's high, and I think we ought to start investigating.
Right.
So that was the start of the journey, and as people say, you know, the rest is history.
Yes, and how long was that? When was that?
That was Christmas 2007.
Yeah.
But in January 2008, after a biopsy and other medical investigations, it was confirmed I did have prostate cancer.
So that's 8 years ago then?
Yeah, 8 years ago this month.
So tell me about those last 8 years. So first of all, when you got that news, what did you feel like?
I remember going into the room where I was going to meet the consultant, and as I went into the room I saw a Macmillan nurse on the left hand side, and I thought, you don't have a Macmillan nurse in the same room of the doctor, so my suspicions were really high.
Yeah.
He confirmed I had prostate cancer. All the diagnoses said I did have prostate cancer. There were biopsies done and scans done. And I felt quite excited, actually, very strangely, because I'm into personal growth myself. And I thought, wow, I wonder what this is going to allow me to push through when I have to push through things I wouldn't normally have to push through.
Yeah.
So for the first, I remember getting him into the car thinking, oh my God, I got prostate cancer. Wow, this is exciting. And then after about 10 minutes, suddenly the thought of, oh my God, I'm going to die from this came over me, and I could see the depressive bit definitely kicked in.
And did you think, I can't let this affect me, I can't let me be depressed from this at that moment, or was it a thing that you were just completely overwhelmed by at that point?
I was overwhelmed by it, and over the next few weeks I went through what people call the change curve of the Kubler-Ross thing. But to jump ahead a little bit, I've never wanted to go to a theme park.
Yes.
And for some reason, I said to a friend of mine, I want to go to Alton Towers. And they said, wow, why do you want to go to Alton Towers? I said, I need to go on a ride where when those things are clamped down on you and there's no way of getting out and you go on the ride, you've got to go through the ride. And I think that was one of my ways of understanding I'm on this journey, and in one sense, I've got no control over it, just like getting on the Alton Towers ride. I remember going on this ride and I was absolutely petrified. And when the ride stopped, I remember saying, who the hell was that screaming? And this mate of mine, Ian, said, that was you, that was you, Martin. I had such a sore throat for 3 or 4 days later, because that was me. Now I understand when I look back, that was me releasing this energy, which had built up over the weeks about, oh my God, what's going to happen to me? How am I going to cope with this? Am I going to die? Is it going to be painful? What about the operation? all those questions came up.
It's really interesting, actually. So tell me about, for people that don't know at home that are watching, prostate cancer itself, so the treatment and things you've had as a result, and plans for the future then, because it's not something that could kill you imminently. You can live with it, and people do die with it, don't they? So tell me a bit about that, the treatment and things that you've gone through.
Great question, that, because before being diagnosed with prostate cancer, I didn't know what a prostate was.
No.
What is it for? And what I learnt was, when a guy ejaculates, it's the small gland about the size of a plum or an apricot, and it produces the semen.
Right.
And so when a guy has an orgasm and ejaculates, it goes into spasm, and that's what ejects the semen out when the guy comes. So for me, just to remind me again where you're coming from, Katie.
Yes, the treatment and things. So you got diagnosed with this, then the next steps.
So the treatment, the investigations were, the doctors didn't know whether it was what they call a tiger or a pussycat.
Right.
So I had a transrectal needle biopsy, where they insert a probe up your bum and they fire some needles across into your prostate and take small samples and analyse those samples to see if they're cancer cells, and there were cancer cells. Then they do a whole body scan to see if the prostate cancer has spread, so they inject you with a radioactive tracer and see if that has actually gone to the bones. MRI scans, CT scans, and they try and find out where the cancer is. What happened for me was, they said, we think it's retained in the prostate. We'll do a radical retropubic prostatectomy. At first I didn't know how to pronounce those words, but now obviously I've said them enough times, and I can. So that was the removal of my prostate retropubically, which means a scar from my belly button down to the top of where my dick is. Other people have robotics where they're a keyhole. 2 months after that, I had another test to see if the cancer cells were not producing PSA. Unfortunately, they were producing PSA, so they said, unfortunately, Martin, we've not been able to exercise the prostate cancer, so we recommend you having abdominal radiotherapy for 5 weeks, each day for 5 weeks, followed by 2 years of hormone suppression therapy, which is effectively chemical castration.
So throughout all this, it sounds pretty intense to me. Were you scared at any point, and how did it make you feel?
Yeah, I didn't keep a diary, but I kept little snippets of a diary. And when I look back, there were 2 episodes where I felt I wanted to commit suicide.
Yeah.
A very strange thing to think about. It felt like I could cope better by killing myself than having to cope with all the uncertainty. It sounds really weird now talking to you, in a normal situation.
Yes.
But that's how scary it was. And I have a fantastic Macmillan nurse. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night and phoning her because I just didn't know what to do. Actually, as I'm telling you, I'm getting back in touch with that feeling. Unbelievable feeling of suicidal feelings. Very, very strange to want to kill yourself.
I can imagine. So was it the Macmillan nurse that got you through that time?
She knew how the human brain works.
Yes.
So she knew my reptilian brain was trying to help me cope. And the way what I've learnt is the way my reptilian brain helps me cope is by shutting down on all the higher brain activity of logic and chatting about things. It either wants to run away, freeze, or fight, and that's all I could do. So my Macmillan nurse knew, trying to talk it through, my brain wasn't available for that. It just wanted those 3 things: freeze, fight, or flight.
And now you had a defining moment where you thought, I can't let this affect me. I need to go out and help others. And kind of have a positive spin on things. So tell me about that moment then.
Yeah, there was a little bit before that actually. What I found was I personally wanted to talk to people. What's your experience? What about this? What about that? And in East Lancashire, where I live, there was nobody. So I was chatting to my Macmillan nurse, and I said, well, how about starting a support group? So with Debbie's help, I started the East Lancashire Prostate Cancer Support Group. Really well attended. We regularly have 30 or 40 people turn up. Really nice people, sweet people. I'd facilitate it. We had a great time. We'd invite people to come in and talk about various things. But I still wasn't getting my needs met. Being a gay man, I wanted to talk about sex. I wanted to talk about me being on Grindr and meeting people. And because I can't ejaculate, can't have an erection, my libido shot to pieces. But it was a kind of thing you don't talk about when you've got the wife there and you know, let's have a cup of tea and have a biscuit and talk about other things.
Yeah.
Even though everyone was nice and sweet. So I left the East Lancs Prostate Cancer Support Group, and they're getting on great. And for me, I started with Andrew Gilliver and Sean Ralph, the Out With Prostate Cancer Support Group.
Okay, excellent. We'll talk more after the break. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for part one. But make sure you stay tuned because, like I said, we've got plenty more to chat about after the break. See you in 3.